In the dim glow of a flickering neon sign that read Jamal's Soul Kitchen, the rain-slicked streets of Elmwood, a forgotten corner of rural Georgia, whispered secrets of quiet despair. Jamal Washington, a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s, wiped grease from his calloused hands on a faded apron that once belonged to his father. His diner, squeezed between a boarded-up laundromat and a pawn shop, was a relic of better days, its formica counters scarred from decades of hurried meals. But tonight, as thunder rumbled like an old grudge, Jamal's world teetered on the edge of collapse. The register echoed empty, a mocking chime from the last customer, a white regular who'd grumbled about spicy food before stiffing him on the bill. Bills piled like autumn leaves on the back counter. Eviction notice from the landlord who'd jack the rent after whispers of urban blight spread through the town council. All because Jamal's face didn't match the all-white Chamber of Commerce. He locked the door at 9 p.m. sharp, the bell tinkling like a final sigh, and stepped into the downpour. That's when he saw him, an old man, huddled under the awning like a discarded newspaper, his threadbare coat clinging to bones that poked through like accusations. White hair matted to a skull etched with lines deeper than the Mississippi, eyes hollowed by winters no one should endure. The stranger's gaze lifted, not with plea, but with a quiet dignity that pierced Jamal's chest, a look that said he'd once held the world in his palms, only to watch it slip away. Jamal's stomach twisted. His own fridge held nothing but wilted greens and a half-loaf of cornbread. Yet something stirred in him, a defiance against the cold calculus of survival that this town had drilled into his soul since he was a boy dodging rocks from kids who called him boy, long after he was a man. Without a word, Jamal unlocked the door again, the rain swallowing the creak. He plated the last of the day's gumbo, rich with okra and andouille from his mama's recipe, steam rising like a prayer. As he set it down, the old man's trembling fingers brushed his, and in that fleeting touch, Jamal felt a current, electric and unseen, as if fate itself had paused to take notice. Little did he know, this simple act of mercy would unravel the invisible chains binding his life, exposing the rot of racism that festered beneath Elmwood's polite smiles. But for now, as lightning cracked the sky, Jamal only wondered, what storm had this stranger weathered to end up here, on the precipice of my ruin? Jamal's days blurred into a rhythm of quiet endurance, each sunrise painting the diner's walls in hues of faded yellow, a color his father had chosen to keep things bright after the riots of '68 scarred their family forever. Born in the shadow of Jim Crow's dying embers, Jamal had inherited more than the diner. He'd shouldered the weight of a legacy laced with loss. His father, Elijah, had built Soul Kitchen from scrap lumber and sheer will in 1972, serving plates of fried chicken and collards to factory workers who didn't blink at a black man's apron. But Elijah's heart gave out in '95, felled by stress and a doctor who dismissed his chest pains as just nerves, because folks like you don't get real heart trouble. Jamal, then 25 and fresh from community college with dreams of franchising, stepped in. He polished the counters until they gleamed, added vegan options to court the new wave of health-conscious millennials trickling into Elmwood after the highway expansion. Yet the town, with its Confederate statues still gleaming on the square and whispers of "those people" at PTA meetings, had other plans. Racism in Elmwood wasn't the firebomb kind anymore. No crosses burning on lawns since the feds cracked down in the '80s. It was subtler, a slow poison seeping through cracked sidewalks. The Chamber of Commerce, a circle of white men in starched collars, funneled grants to up-and-coming spots like Betty's Bakery, where scones cost triple Jamal's biscuits but drew the tourists. Jamal's applications vanished into ether, returned with notes about insufficient community ties. Customers trickled in during off hours, black families from the East Side, a few guilty liberals seeking authentic flavor. But the lunch rush, a ghost town. He'd overhear them in the Piggly Wiggly. Jamal's place? 2. Ethnic. Gives me heartburn. Online reviews. Anonymous barbs. 1 star. feels unsafe after dark. Lies. All of it. But enough to choke his Google rating to 3.2, scaring off rideshare drop-offs. Lately, the squeeze tightened. The landlord, Mr. Hargrove, a paunchy relic with a faded rebel flag bumper sticker, had hiked rent 40% overnight, citing market adjustments after a viral post accused Jamal's diner of lowering property values. Hargrove's son, the sheriff's deputy, patrolled the block twice nightly, lights flashing like warnings. Jamal's wife, Lena, had left 2 years back, tired of scraping pennies for their daughter's braces while he chased a dream that felt more like a noose. Now, alone with his ledger's red ink, Jamal questioned every choice. The second mortgage on the house his parents bought with blood money from sharecropping fields, the loans from predatory lenders charging 28% because banks didn't do small business for startups like yours. That rainy night, as the old man savored the gumbo, spoon dipping slow, savoring the spice like a memory long buried, Jamal busied himself wiping down stools, his mind a whirlwind. The stranger ate with reverence, eyes closing at each bite as if reclaiming a piece of himself. When he finished, he pushed the bowl forward, fingers tracing the rim, and met Jamal's gaze with something unspoken, gratitude laced with sorrow. Jamal waved it off, pouring coffee from the dregs of the pot, black and bitter as the thoughts crowding his head. Outside, the storm eased to a drizzle, but inside, a different tempest brewed. The old man lingered, coat drying by the heater, and in the steam-kissed air, Jamal caught glimpses. A tarnished watch peeking from a cuff, engraved with initials that whispered of forgotten privilege. A faint scar on the hand, like from a ring long pawned. As midnight neared, the stranger rose, shoulders straightening with an authority that belied his rags. He pressed something into Jamal's palm, a crumpled note, edges worn soft, before vanishing into the mist-shrouded alley. Jamal unfolded it under the counterlight. Coordinates, scribbled in elegant script, pointing to an overgrown lot on the town's outskirts. Come at dawn. Trust the path that fed you once. Heart pounding, Jamal pocketed it, the diner's clock ticking like a countdown. What pull had this encounter cast over his fraying life? And why did it feel like the first crack in the wall Elmwood had built around him? A wall of polite exclusion, where black ambition was tolerated only until it dared to thrive. Dawn broke over Elmwood like a reluctant confession, painting the horizon in streaks of bruised purple. Jamal, sleepless and shadow-eyed, slipped from his creaking bed above the diner, the note burning a hole in his pocket. The coordinates led him down Route 17, past fields where cotton once bowed under enslaved backs, now barren under corporate leases that favored the same old names. His old pickup rattled over potholes, radio static his only companion, until the lot emerged, a tangle of kudzu-choked oaks framing a sagging Victorian manor, its turrets defying the weeds like a forgotten king. This was Blackwood Estate, whispered about in town lore as cursed, built by a carpetbagger in 1867, abandoned after scandals of Yankee gold tainting Southern bloodlines. Locals steered clear, calling it haunted by ghosts of Reconstruction, but Jamal felt no chill, only a pull, magnetic and insistent. He parked at the rusted gate, boots crunching gravel as he approached. The old man waited on the porch, no longer a specter of the streets, but transformed, clean-shaven in a wool suit patched at the elbows, eyes sharp as polished flint. No words passed, but the man's nod drew Jamal inside, through halls echoing with dust motes dancing in sunbeams. Walls peeled to reveal murals of antebellum grandeur, white planters in silk, black field hands blurred into shadow. Up a spiral stair, they entered a study frozen in time, leather-bound ledgers stacked like accusations, a globe scarred by fingers that had spun empires. The man gestured to a desk, its surface a map of Elmwood, pinned with yellowed deeds and clippings from the town gazette, headlines from '89, when the Klan rallied against a black mayoral candidate, from '05, boycotts that shuttered the last black-owned grocery. As Jamal traced the lines, the story unfolded in fragments the man arranged like puzzle pieces. Letters from the 1920s, detailing how the Hargrove family, fresh from Tulsa's race massacre where they'd profited on displaced wealth, had seized Blackwood through forged liens. Elijah Washington's name appeared in faded ink. His great-uncle, a sharecropper who'd toiled these very grounds, signing away birthrights for a pittance under threat of torch and noose. The diner, built on a sliver of that stolen land, its deed buried in county vaults, overlooked because no one checks the fine print for folks like us. Rage simmered in Jamal's veins, hot as the gumbo he'd shared. Not just at the theft, but the erasure, the way Elmwood's history books glossed over massacres with unfortunate misunderstandings. The old man's hands, steady now, flipped to recent files, emails from the chamber, plotting to eminent domain Jamal's block for a revitalization project, code for a white-owned chain that'd pave over his legacy with parking lots. Hargrove's signature looped like a snake, coiling around appraisals that undervalued black properties by 60%, a pattern repeated since redlining maps from the 40s. Jamal's breath caught. This wasn't chance. It was design, a machine oiled by generations of quiet complicity. The town that smiled at his collards on Fridays boycotted his loans on Mondays, whispering risky investment while funneling millions to startups with names like O'Malley's Pub. But the revelation deepened, twisting like roots under soil. The old man, Elias Blackwood, last of the line, fallen on hard times after a Wall Street crash stripped his inheritance, revealed his own shame. Born to privilege, he'd turned a blind eye to the undercurrents, marrying into Hargrove kin before the hypocrisy soured his soul. Disinherited for liberal sympathies, he'd wandered invisible in his own town until hunger drove him to Jamal's door. That meal? Not charity, but catalyst, a test of the humanity Elmwood had tried to starve out of both men. Elias spread blueprints now. The manor held evidence, hidden vaults of original deeds proving Elijah's claim, enough to sue for restitution and shatter the web. Tension coiled as tires crunched outside. Hargrove's deputy, patrolling suspicious activity. Jamal's pulse thundered. Exposure meant retaliation, whispers turning to threats. The diner's windows already etched with phantom scratches from past pranks. Elias's eyes hardened, pressing a key into Jamal's palm. The vaults. The fight begins where the meal ended, his gesture implied. As sirens wailed distant, Jamal pocketed the key, the manor's shadows lengthening like allies. The rising sun glinted off the map, illuminating paths to justice long buried. But venturing there meant facing the town's facade head-on, risking everything for a reckoning that could rebuild or bury him. The air thickened with unspoken stakes. One man's kindness had unearthed a grave of grievances, and now the ghosts demanded their due. The vault door groaned open in the manor's underbelly, a crypt of iron and secrets exhaling decades of musty truth. Jamal's flashlight beam danced over stacks of parchment, deeds yellowed as old bones, affidavits sworn by long-dead witnesses to land grabs veiled as progress. Elias stood sentinel at the threshold, his frail frame a bulwark against the encroaching dusk, as if willing the walls to hold back the storm brewing beyond. But the real tempest raged inside Jamal. Fury at the architects of his father's broken dreams, grief for the lineage reduced to footnotes in dusty archives. Each page turned was a lash. 1923, Elijah's kin evicted at gunpoint for trespassing on soil they'd bled for. 1965, voting rights marches met with dogs and fire hoses, scattering families like chaff. Sirens swelled closer, red-blue pulses fracturing the study's leaded glass. Hargrove himself stormed the grounds now, flanked by deputies in crisp khaki, their boots trampling heirloom roses like conquerors reclaiming turf. The confrontation erupted at the porch. Hargrove's face, ruddy with bourbon and entitlement, twisted at the sight of Jamal emerging, Elias at his elbow like a specter risen. No fists flew. Elmwood's venom was verbal venom, laced with code. "Boy, this ain't your place," Hargrove snarled through the screen, his deputy holstering a hand on his sidearm. Squatting on private property, We'll have you out by week's end." The air crackled, thick with the unspoken. "You don't belong, never did." Jamal's hand clenched the deed bundle, Elias's key glinting like defiance. He thrust the papers forward, the wind whipping them like flags of rebellion. Hargrove snatched one, eyes narrowing at the seals. Authentic, unbreakable. The color drained from his jowls as recognition dawned. The original surveys, notarized by a judge his grandfather had bribed, now weaponized against the Empire. Deputies shifted, uneasy, as Elias stepped into the fray, his voice a gravelly thunder despite the years, revealing the blood ties, the shared sins that bound them all. Hargrove lunged, not with rage, but desperation, a grab for the bundle that tore pages free, scattering them across the lawn like confetti of culpability. Chaos bloomed. Neighbors gathered at the tree line, phones aloft, capturing the unraveling. A deputy radioed for backup, but hesitation flickered, body cams rolling, the facade cracking under scrutiny. Jamal stood firm, chest heaving, as Elias collapsed to one knee, clutching his side, the toll of exposure etching final lines on his face. In that suspended breath, the manor's shadow engulfed them, a tableau of reckoning. The poor black owner, the fallen white heir, the racist patriarch exposed in the glare of unintended witnesses. Hargrove staggered back, the deed fluttering from his grasp, landing at Jamal's feet like a crown. The sirens peaked, then waned, retreat, not reinforcement, as the first viral clip flickered to life on screens across Elmwood. The climax hung, raw and electric. Justice not in blows, but in the unmasking, the moment the town's polite poison spilled into the light. Weeks blurred into a whirlwind of courtrooms and cable news. The manor's unearthed truths igniting a firestorm that reshaped Elmwood's skyline. Jamal's claim held. Judges, swayed by the ironclad deeds and a swelling chorus of affidavits from East Side elders long silenced, awarded restitution that the diner secured. Blackwood Estate deeded to a trust under Jamal's stewardship, its rooms reborn as a community center teaching Black history unvarnished. Hargrove's empire crumbled. Indictments for fraud followed, his chamber cronies scattering like roaches to light. Elias, in his final days tended by nurses who saw him not as vagrant but victor, passed the watch to Jamal, a heirloom of reconciliation, its engraving now a mantra. From ashes, alliance. Jamal's soul kitchen thrived anew, counters bustling with faces of every shade, the neon sign blazing brighter against repainted walls. Tourists came for the gumbo, stayed for the stories etched in plaques, tributes to Elijah, to the sharecroppers whose labor built the town they were denied. The chamber diversified, grants flowing equitable at last as viral footage looped on social feeds, sparking dialogues in living rooms nationwide. Jamal, no longer solitary, mentored young entrepreneurs. Black teens coding apps from the center's laptops, Latina bakers sharing ovens, proving resilience wasn't solitary, but shared. Yet the victory carried scars. Nights when Jamal traced the note's coordinates in the dark, wondering at the fragile thread of one meal that toppled giants. Racism's roots ran deep. Elmwood's statues toppled, but mindsets lingering in boardrooms and ballots. Elias's passing left a void, a reminder that change demanded sacrifice, from the giver and the given. Jamal poured coffee for strangers now, each cup a quiet vow. Kindness as weapon, visibility as shield. In the end, as rain pattered the diner's roof once more, Jamal gazed at the alley where fate had knocked. One act, born of empty pockets and fuller heart, had rewritten ledgers long skewed. But what if that stranger had been turned away? Would the walls hold, or would silence swallow another dream? In a world still whispering exclusions, the question lingers. When do we feed the hidden stories? Before they starve us all. Share yours below. Has a moment of mercy ever cracked open your world? Like, subscribe, and remember, the table is set for revolution, one plate at a time.